Let's meet Trevor Perry, a pilot who spends 50% of his time travelling to places no one's ever heard of. We talk about camping on dormant volcanoes, solo adventuring through the back roads of Oman, and swimming through crocodile-infested waters just to get to work on time. And as always, we'd like to thank the sponsor of today's podcast, Dry Flush Toilets. If you haven't seen these amazing off-grid toilets, you really need to check them out. They're the cleanest, easiest, smell-free toilet that you've ever seen, and they recently won the new Best Camping Technology in Australia. No more dumping chemicals or maintaining a composting toilet. Go to www.dryflush.com.au to see how they work. Let's get travelling.
Welcome to the Off-Grid Traveller podcast, where we meet the people who go off-grid and into a life of adventure, challenge, and grand new horizons. Whether on land or on sea, you'll meet some fascinating characters who've chosen the road less travelled and discover their best tips, worst moments, favourite destinations, and a whole lot more.
Hey guys, welcome to the Off-Grid Traveller. Today I have Trevor Perry, great name by the way, who is an air pilot and also an avid traveller who's been everywhere under the sun, has figured out a way to not only see the world, but get paid for it at the same time. So Trevor, it's really awesome to have you with us. We had a brief chat before, you explaining about, you figured out a way quite a while back to be able to spend a long period of time in these incredible locations around the world, but at the same time, doing your job, which is a pilot. And I'd love if you could just give a little bit of elaboration on that.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's awesome to be here. And it's a fairly unique position to be in order to make the world a really small place, because I think there's very few professions where you have the amount of control over your schedule where you can get a large block of days off on a monthly basis, but then also combine that with past travel or travel privileges in order to make air travel quite affordable there. It definitely makes the world a much smaller place. So I've been lucky enough to, for a while there, I was doing a trip a month for about 8 years. It's a little bit less now, especially with a young kid on the way here.
And which you have, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. But yeah, so like I would bid, say, a block of days off at the end of the month, and then another block of days off at the beginning of the following month there, so I could get the large amount of time off to go off and explore. And I know that that's not necessarily for everybody there. I know a lot of pilots and our flight crew and cabin crew in general who the last thing that they want to do on their days off is set foot in an airplane there, and I totally get that there. But for me, it's just, I don't know, I can't sit still for too long, to my wife's chagrin.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because with that in mind, you normally have about 3 weeks there or thereabouts that you're able to adventure around into these different locations. Is that right? Was it 3 weeks or a month?
Yeah, it's about 3 to 4 weeks there.
Man, that's crazy. And so for 8 years, every single month or so, you were going to all these crazy different locations. And so, in that aspect, you've done a kind of off-grid adventure. But it's just crazy how different people experience life differently, right? And that's what just really excites me about this. Is that you were mentioning before that you had a crazy time where something about in croc-infested waters, I believe you mentioned.
Oh, yeah, that was actually at work, of all places. It was on a layover down in Costa Rica, and my go-to place to go surf. So they put us up in a town called Tamarindo. It's nicknamed Tamagringo because it's kind of where like all the tourists go.
All the gringos go.
And but there's across the estuary, there's another beach that's a little bit quieter, and I like the surf over there too. So I usually go surfing over there, and I made the mistake of surfing right till sunset. And that in and of itself wasn't a big deal, but when I was finished, I couldn't find where I hid my stuff in the bushes. And So I had an early morning pickup the next day to go to work. And I'm like, well, okay, so I'm stuck on this beach here. I got to get to work tomorrow. How am I going to get over? Well, I don't feel like calling up crew scheduling saying, hey, I'm stuck on a beach here. Sorry, going to have to delay my check-in tomorrow so did what I had to do, get on my board and keep my feet out of the water. And I keep try to stay out as far towards open ocean as I
And
could.
this is when the sun's coming down, right? Like,
This is after sunset. So this
oh
is in the
gosh.
dark and paddling across on my board across croc-infested waters in an estuary. And you can see them all over the place in the daytime as well. So yeah, I always said if work ever gave me a hard time about anything, I'd just be like, you know what? I swam through croc-infested waters just to show up for work. So
Boom. And who
yeah.
can say that? That's the beauty of traveling and being able to do what you've been able to do. And you mentioned as well that one of the biggest things is that because you come from Canada where the weather isn't really fit for surfing, let's say, right? And because of what you've done traveling, you've been able to actually turn it into oh my gosh, like I have these hobbies now that I would never have experienced or never had the opportunity to do. And so it'd be really cool to just kind of unpack in your mind what got you to a point where you were like, first I want to travel, and then finding these hobbies. And if you didn't travel, would you have been living the same life,
Mm-hmm. So in terms of traveling, I mean, ever since I was a little guy, I was always fascinated by geography. I would spend hours just looking at like the big atlas that was sitting on my parents' bookshelf as a kid. And then, the Encarta encyclopedia and stuff like that when I was a little guy. And then, throughout a good portion of my adult life, post high school, everything that I had focused on was sort of on my career. Everything I put my heart and soul into getting to where I was at in aviation there.
So you were always directed that route. You always wanted to go that route since you were a kid then?
I did. And that's a pretty common story with most pilots there. But, when I got to a major carrier, a major airline, I was like, okay, cool. This is great. This has been the goal. Well, now what? And then, I really kind of thought about it. I was like, well, I'm sort of in a unique position, like I described beforehand here, to see the world and make the world a much smaller place. So that's sort of when, for lack of a better term, the aggressive traveling started.
Yeah, right.
At that point. And then, I got addicted to it after that because really I hadn't been prior to that. The only place I'd been outside of Canada and the US was just Mexico. So
the free Americas, basically. Well, there's four, isn't there? You've got Central, and then you've got South America. So you'd only been very large area, but at the same time, you can still drive the whole way through if you wanted to.
For sure, for sure. And then in terms of hobbies, I mean, well, there is surfing here in Canada out in Tofino, but it's a bit of a trek to get out there. And also it's pretty limited in its season. I mean, depending on whether or not you want to wear a wetsuit or a dry suit or anything like that to do that. But yeah, definitely this type of traveling has led to other hobbies, including surfing as well as diving there, which I don't think that I would have gotten into, at least not nearly as much, had this not been accessible to me. Most of my trips are usually centered around hiking and climbing or multi-day treks there. That's what I'll actively seek out when I try and find a destination as well. And if I wasn't traveling, I'm pretty sure I'd still be into that. I mean, the Rocky Mountains are pretty much my backyard.
It's a Canada lifestyle, right? Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, but I definitely wouldn't have as varied experience with that if it weren't for traveling.
And like you said, would you have even thought about diving and surfing if you were in, where if you'd stayed there? And that the reason why I bring that up is just it's amazing how when you start going to these other places, you pick up, you see what other people are doing. You say, hey, you know what? I'd actually
Mhm.
like to have a go at that because, I lived in Thailand for, a long time. And so I started doing Muay Thai. And if I hadn't started doing Muay Thai, I wouldn't have started doing boxing, which I do now. And
Mhm.
I'd always liked it, but I'd never seen it visually. You're walking down the street and you just see these guys doing it. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, can I try? And
Yeah.
then they beat the living crap out of you, and you either go home or you go again. And I went
Right.
again, weirdly. And so it's just what I really love about traveling and getting these abilities to go to these different places is that it you're always yourself, but it expands you out one mile further than what you were. And so it's just understanding and trying to remind people to get out there and see what actually lights your fire.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I think the biggest thing for most people, I mean, there's the obvious financial barrier, but the mental barrier is just the fact that it's the unknown. People are so afraid of the unknown. And, um, especially when it comes to solo travel,
Mm,
right? If you haven't done that in the past, that can be terrifying, until you actually do. And then you realize, okay, like, and I can't count the number of times things have gone awry when I've traveled, but some way, somehow, things always have a way of working out.
mm.
I'm sitting back at home right here having this conversation with you. So there's nothing ever that's so catastrophic that things don't generally work out, and then they make a good story in the long run
Yeah,
there too.
yeah. Well, you like you said with the crocodile one, is there any other like moments where you've gone like, okay, this is a bit this is a bit hardcore right now. Am I sure I should have gone this route?
um One that comes to mind was at the Namibia Botswana border.
Okay.
And
It's a
so
great
we
start of a
had,
story.
yeah, yeah. So we had just finished in Botswana after a meeting a friend. She was flying bush planes down there, and we had waved goodbye to her. So we're at the border, and there's no buses or anything that gets us to Windhoek, the capital, from there. So it's pretty common to hitchhike down there.
Oh wow.
So we ended up catching a ride with a bunch of fishermen sitting in the box of their truck there. And we're driving along the highway, and we could see the truck just starting to swerve, just starting to go off to the side of the highway until it's actually getting off the side of the road here. And as soon as you do that, like some guys start pounding on the back of the cab. And then as soon as he does that, the truck swerves right into the middle, back into the middle of the freeway. So we all go fly in one direction. And then he pulls over onto the side of the road and gets out, pours like a bottle of
No.
water on his face. And they're like, oh yeah, he's been up for like 36 hours or whatever it was there. I'm like, okay, well, like we can drive, one of us can drive. And they're like, no, 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 he's fine. Like, no, honestly, like we could drive, it's okay. They're like, no, no, he's fine. Okay, well then, you know what, we're probably gonna hitch another ride here.
Yeah.
That's just about it for us. Yeah, that was a little bit sketchy.
Man, like and that 36 hours staying up, like, because as a pilot, right, you have to do long times up as well. What was
Mhm.
in your mind in that essence? Obviously, the logical thought is no, I'm getting off this, but being someone who's been on a plane so many times, you must have stayed up way over certain periods of time, or as much as you're allowed to. What How does your brain feel at that point?
Yeah, well, we have we have duty day restrictions, we have flight time restrictions. It's a whole complicated matrix depending on your circadian rhythm, the time of
Mm,
day that you check in. Uh, The unfortunate part is Canadian laws, which have been recently updated, still fall
Right.
short of science in that way. So it does definitely lead to fatigue. The onus is on us to, you know, not fly if we're fatigued or we feel that we are fatigued. But the reality of the situation doesn't necessarily provide for, to be able to do that all the time
Right.
either, unfortunately. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much I'm incriminating myself here, but
This episode of Off Grid Traveller is proudly sponsored by Dry Flush Toilets Australia, home of the world famous Lavio Dry Flush Toilet. This patented electric toilet has no chemicals, is not a composting system, and can be set up literally anywhere in under 60 seconds. It looks and feels like an at-home toilet to use, but it can be used anywhere with no external power or water, and it still flushes. There's also no cartridge to clean or empty, and it's perfect for camping, caravans, converted vans, boats, tiny homes, or anything off-grid. Go to www.dryflush.com.au and use coupon code OFFGRID to get a 10% discount on your toilet order today.
but
Don't incriminate yourself then.
No,
Just...
no. There's definitely some times where I've flown and I've been quite tired, and it's I mean it's unavoidable to feel tired, especially when you're flying a red eye. I mean, coming back from Hawaii the other night there, the red eye 6-hour flight, it's it doesn't matter how much rest you've gotten, it's still that time of the day where your circadian rhythm is such that you're going to be, or however much you've acclimatized to that time zone, you're still going to be tired. So yeah, it's inevitable. It's almost kind of a part of the job. But
well, that's why you don't do it alone either, right? You've always got a team with you that are keeping, you taking turns. Even on short flights, I'm sure that you've got at least 2 people there.
Yeah, that's right. All commercial airliners have at least 2 pilots, and then on long haul or ultra long haul flights, there'll be an augmented crew, so you'll have a 3rd or even a 4th pilot.
Is that just someone who's kind of like a backup, or?
Yeah, so they'll switch on and off. So for example, flights so for an ultra long haul flight, you have 2 pilots who can only fly X amount of hours, and then they'll switch off, and the other 2 pilots will fly the remainder of the flight there. So yeah, the rules are a little bit different with ultra long haul and extra crew members to help augment the flight.
Right. Yeah.
And some of the bunks on like these wide body airplanes, like they actually have bunk beds like over top of the cabin there.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask about, because I've had different people on and they talk about their setup and stuff like that, and they have their beds, and like some people have had their catamarans where they've got like a sleeping area and bunk beds, but you guys get your own sleeping area inside the bunks, like inside the plane as well, right?
Yeah, in the wide body airplanes, the ones that tend to do the like long haul, ultra long haul, they've got the bunks like over top, and it's kind of funny actually. There's an escape hatch that goes right through the ceiling of the cabin there. So if you wanted to play a joke on somebody, you could pop down and say hi to somebody sitting in the seat there. But yeah, no, the airplane I fly, the 737, there's no bunks or anything like that. It's usually short to medium haul type of thing that I end up doing.
So when you do those, the large ones, because obviously people always want to know about the equipment that you have with you. So it's just interesting to say that like on a long flight, you have bunk beds. What do you get any other amenities? Because it seems like you're in your own first class there if you've got that sleeping facilities there.
The bunks are pretty nice. Like you've got the same entertainment systems that are in the back of the seats there, and then they're lie flat beds inside there. Not all wide bodies have bunks on top, like the A330s or like larger Airbus airplanes that for the airplane that I fly, they just have like a business class seat that they can lie down on there. Oh, nice. So it's not. Yeah, it's all right. It's enough to get a little bit of rest in there. in any case there, which you're definitely going to want on those ultra long haul flights that go upwards of 16 hours.
Yeah, I bet. And
Mhm.
because obviously, as you mentioned before as well, because obviously you have your kid, which is coming, and again, congratulations on that. With that in
Oh, thank
mind,
you.
I'm guessing that your travel plans are probably going to be minimizing a little bit. But do you have any goals or plans for any other like trips or anything adventures that you've got in mind at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So the the type of traveling is going to change a little bit. That's inevitable.
Yeah.
Um, Especially with where I'm staying, where I'm going. I would like to, especially when he's really young. There, everybody says that it's easier to travel when they're, say, an infant or really young, as opposed to
Mm.
a toddler. So, in terms of specific destinations, I mean, the next ones on the list that I have for me are Bangladesh, Papua New Guinea, and
Wow.
Mauritania. But I don't think I'll be able to do that with the little guy there. So
Maybe
we might.
not. Well, I'm sure if they saw you with a little baby on your back like that, trekking through
Mhm.
Papua New Guinea, I'm sure they'd be more than like friendly to help you out.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely for sure. But I
I don't know what your
think,
wife would think.
and that's just it, right? My wife, she travels a little bit differently than I do. She
For
likes her
sure.
creature comforts,
Yeah.
and I'm perfectly okay with sleeping in a hole in the ground. That doesn't bother me.
Same as me and my
Um,
wife.
well, I mean, but when we travel together, she's actually really, really good at she's good at compromising.
Yeah.
So and even, I mean, most recently, I mean, we just went down to Puerto Vallarta for 5 days last month, and I mean, that's an easy trip, and I was fully expecting it just to be like totally not what I usually do and just relax.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
she was actually she was up for adventure. We went to a couple of fishing villages there, hiked to a couple of waterfalls when she was at the time, I guess 24, 25 weeks pregnant. So
Wow.
she's a bit of a trooper there. And then whenever we travel, all right, sometimes we'll stay either in guest houses or hostels together. And then there'll be the odd day where we'll stay in somewhere a little bit nicer just for her. So,
As you do, mate. Like
mhm.
I've said before, I've got a plan to go to Thailand soon, and basically we're going there to make music and just chill out. But the first day we get there, I'm booking like 5-star buffet. I want to absolutely destroy my stomach, so that when I get onto the coach to go down to the islands, I just knock out. And it's just having a bit of luxury, and then sleeping in a jungle tent. That
Yeah,
beautiful mix between both of them. We live in a world where you can do that within a week if you wanted
yeah,
to. Or you could go, like you said, you could go to Bangladesh and you could be living in absolute palaces, or you could be living, with locals and probably, in my opinion, having a better time.
hmm
It just depends on what fires you up when you travel, and what and who you're with. Who you're with is a massive one.
100%. And actually, um, my buddy Tristan, we've done several trips together. We've been through all sorts of ridiculous adventures, and um, uh, we have pretty much the same idea of whatever we end up doing there. So usually, like if there's a go-to for like a travel buddy, it'll either be him or it's usually just solo on my own
Hmm.
there. And I think it's good to travel solo first and then go with a buddy there too,
Yeah.
because then you're used to, because he's done quite a bit of solo travel himself.
Mm.
And so I find that like I have no problem reaching out to other people, especially talking to locals, things like that, and other travelers. But because of that solo travel, you know, when we travel together, I find that we tend to attract like a bigger crowd there,
Mm.
and then like the crowd starts to
The energy,
amass,
right? And it
and
just everyone
and
kind
you
of
kind of get your group
magnetizes.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's really good. I love the vibe that creates.
Yeah. Do you have any what would you say is your three most recommended places that you would tell anyone to get to, from just boom, you've gone there and you went, this is life. Like,
Yeah, I understand that the type of traveling I do isn't necessarily for everyone,
mm,
but if you're looking like in terms of like just sheer adventure and like, wow, this is amazing, um, Oman is definitely up there.
wow. Okay.
There's one moment that sticks out in my head specifically, and this is kind of my go-to whenever anybody asks, what's the most amazing place you've ever been to? And there's tons of them. This is just kind of my go-to answer for this. And there's one moment that sticks out in my head, and Wadi Shab. It's this big, narrow river valley
Mm,
that you can hike up for tens of kilometers. And I and Oman's beautiful because you can also random camp anywhere in the country as long as it's not cultivated land or somebody's backyard. So you
say
spring
that
your
again.
tent with
Oh, you
you.
can just random camp. Okay, so you can literally.
Yes,
Wow, that's cool.
anywhere. As long as it's not somebody's backyard or yeah, cultivated land. And so I remember like the end of the day, because it was freaking hot out that day too. Just setting up my tent, sitting down, kicking off my boots. I put my flip flops on, and uh, there's this uh, stream running through the middle of the valley, and I I go down just like take a dip inside it, and it was like so cool and so refreshing. And the whole base of it is lined with date palms, and then you have these beautiful reddish
Wow.
rocks like on the side juxtaposed against that, like beautiful colors, and nobody for miles. Like this whole place all to myself. Like so that I think that there stood out for me the most, just in terms of like a single moment where it's like this is paradise. Um, Other than that, Guatemala was
Guatemala.
incredible. Specifically, hiking a Catenango volcano. It's a dormant volcano that sits right next to Fuego, which is an active volcano.
So can you feel the heat underneath?
Not on a Catenango.
Hmm.
No, you'd actually have to go onto Fuego for that, I'm pretty sure. But um, I have been I have been to volcanoes where you can feel the heat
Yeah.
underneath, such as Danakil Depression in Ethiopia, which is
Wow.
really cool to see. Although it's extremely caustic there, you can feel it scratching your lungs and all that stuff. So that's what was so great about this in Guatemala was on a Catenango, you're right next to the volcano, but you don't smell the sulfur or anything like that. And I remember the first day of the hike, we get to the camp and we're shrouded in cloud. And then I hear this like boom, boom, boom. And I don't really think much about it at first because I think that it's a thunderstorm that's
Mm.
next to us. And it took probably about maybe 3 or 4 times until I realized, wait, no, that's actually the volcano. And then the clouds cleared. And then as night fell, that's when it was just awe-inspiring. You could see the molten rock and pyroclastic flow just spew out the side and down the side of the mountain. Like, yeah, I would definitely say within the top 3 to 5 experiences I've ever had. And
Wow.
then, yeah, and then the next morning, I mean, we didn't sleep that much that night because that volcano erupts maybe every 5, 10 minutes, or at
So
least it did.
it keeps you on.
Um,
Well, obviously, visually, it must be stunning. But then obviously
mhm.
it keeps you on edge for the fact that you're not used to having a volcano near you as
Totally. Well, I
that
mean, you're
active.
not. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go to sleep that night either. We were supposed to get up at I think it was like 2 a.m. or something like that to reach
Yeah.
the summit for sunrise, and you're just like, oh, I don't want to go to sleep. This is incredible. When's the next time I'm going to get to experience this? So,
Wow.
yeah, that was definitely. And then, oh man, hmm, I think. maybe just for the sheer adventure of it all, probably Kyrgyzstan as well. That would
Kyrgyzstan
be
as well.
that
Man,
was
you're
great.
pulling out these like absolutely deep cuts right now. Like, like most people go on these standard adventures, you're like, no, Kyrgyzstan, right? Here's something that happened here. Like, that's so
So
cool.
usually what I'll do is like I'm always fascinated by places I know nothing about.
Yeah.
So when I try and pick out a place, I'll look at a map and I'll see a region or a country. I'm like, I really don't know anything about that place. And then I'll just do a little bit of light research, and 10 times out of 10, it's like, this place is actually really freaking cool. I
Yeah.
want to go to there. So then, uh, yeah, usually the most limiting factors for me are like visa entry or entry requirements there. Especially as an airline pilot, I can't surrender my passport or anything
Mm.
like that. So there's a lot of places that I'd love to go that I'm limited by that. So, but yeah, I'd say Kyrgyzstan. My buddy and I, we spent a couple weeks trekking through the Tian Shan mountains in there, and it was kind of weird because we like it's a very similar flora and fauna to the Canadian Rockies,
Okay.
so it had a very familiar feel to it right up until you come across a farmer's yurt in the valley there, because it was the time of year where all the farmers had moved their flocks into the mountains to graze. So, and then you go into there, and like the absolute most freshest baked flatbread you'll ever have off like a wood stove or a campfire on there.
Man.
And then all sorts of other things like horse milk, which tastes just god awful. It's the worst thing you could ever have.
And how are the people there? Like, how are they to you? Because obviously, in my opinion, mate, you are one of the true off grid travelers with your ability to literally go off with your random camping. You got your camping set. It's either you or you with your friend, and meeting these random people on the journeys as well. Like, how are you finding them? Are they friendly? Are they aggressive? Like, what have you found as the consensus?
Yeah, it really all depends. Like Kyrgyzstan, for example, people are incredibly friendly there. Like um, you'll almost never not be invited into a yurt if you're out in the mountains there and for some tea and
Oh,
bread
that's so
or
cool.
anything else like that. Um, and people also just want to know like what your
What are
deal
you
is. Like,
doing?
what are you doing here, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's other instances as well. Like Somalia, so the northern part of Somalia, it's called Somaliland.
Hmm.
It's sort of a breakaway state that's not officially recognized by anybody other than Taiwan.
Hmm.
And when people think Somalia, they think Black Hawk Down, right? And
Right.
Somaliland is just about anything but. It's a very stable region, and uh, you cannot walk 15 meters down the street in Hargeisa, the major city there, without somebody stopping you, inviting you to sit down for tea, wanting to know who you are, what your deal is, why are you here, right? And it's a lot of other regions, especially more touristed regions, usually that conversation leads to a sales pitch or them trying to peddle you
As
something.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
And that's just not the case here
Hmm.
at all. People are just have a genuine interest in wanting to talk to you, and that's a lot of places too. But I think especially Somaliland. There was one instance where I was walking through the souk, through the marketplace there, and there was a group of like, I kind of found myself in a sticky situation where there was like a group of elderly women shouting at me and like pushing me around, and like, okay, I'm trying to walk away, and then they like block me, and I'm like, okay, well, what do I do, right? I obviously don't want to push back. That could
Hmm.
lead to some
It's what they're
problems
waiting
there.
for potentially.
So
Yeah.
then but then there was a man who like came in and just like, here, come with me, and then sort of escorted me out of there, and that was that. But for the most part, there's I'd say solo travel, especially places that are generally off the grid. that's where you'll find the most friendly people who are genuinely interested and want to make a connection.
No, I love that. And on that note, guys, it's really the biggest thing is when you are solo traveling or traveling anywhere is, again, we've said this before, is the people that you meet can make or break a journey. And if you are constantly focusing in your mind to be a good individual and taking the culture, 9 times out of 10 people are going to always welcome you with open arms. And look, you're always going to get that bad egg, and once in a while just throw that bad egg against the wall, because then everyone can see how bad it smells.
100%. And
yeah.
Everybody they all want the same thing, right? Everybody wants to be happy, healthy. They want their family to be happy and healthy, regardless of what their governments or what government or regime they're living under. And I think one thing that a real poignant moment for me actually was in Oman again, sitting down to dinner with a woman in Muscat, and she was telling me about her daughter, how her daughter was going to school in the US in Birmingham, Alabama, and she was so afraid for her daughter to go to the States because of all the gun violence. And I just thought that was so interesting, because just before I left for that trip, I had a couple of people say to me, oh, what the hell are you going to Oman for? It's the Middle East, it's dangerous, even though it's one of the most stable countries in the region, right? And it really had me thinking, okay, so here's two people on opposite sides of the planet who are afraid of each other for absolutely no reason other than the fact that just what they've been exposed to in the media.
Oh, mate. Well, that is a whole different thing that Trevor, we may have to unpack the next time we talk.
Yeah.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for joining us on the Off-Grid Traveler. This has been amazing, Trevor. That last thing, I want everyone to just remember what Trevor said there. And if you have to repeat that, go repeat it. But seriously, thanks so much, Trevor. It's been awesome having you with us, and have an amazing day.
If you or someone you know would be an interesting guest on the show, we'd love to hear from you. We love speaking to everyday people who've taken to the open road or open seas for an extended period of time, or anyone that's set up their life in an off-grid location. Please email guest@offgridtraveler.com.au to get in touch. That's 2 L's in Traveller.
If you like that video, you'll probably like this one, and you'll really love this one. And as always, we want to thank you for joining us. And if you want to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel grow, and it means that we can talk about more travel, get more tips, and everything off grid. Cheers.